Hello everyone, we are talking about the development of the spinal cord and now we'll see the development of functional columns. The functional columns is actually the functional integration of the spinal cord as to how various cells within the spinal cord are arranged within themselves so that they can relay information to and from the spinal cord. We'll see how this development takes place. We'll see what are the dorsal, ventral and the lateral walls of the spinal cord. We'll also talk about the development of the functional columns, and finally we'll talk about columns of the alar and the basal lamina. Let's get into it. So first of all, we have the dorsal and the ventral walls of the neural tube. So this is the neural tube. This is the dorsal wall and this is the ventral wall. So on cross section, the cavity of neural tube, it appears as a vertical slit. So here you can see a vertical slit can be seen, and this is the cavity of the neural tube. Now the dorsal wall and the ventral wall, they remain thin and are called the roof and the floor plates respectively. This is the roof plate and this is the floor plate. Now moving on, the lateral walls. Now these are the lateral walls. These are the lateral walls. Now the lateral walls of the neural tube, they get thickened. Here you can see there's the thickening of the lateral walls. Now the lateral wall of the neural tube is demarcated into a dorsal and a ventral region by an inner longitudinal sulcus, which is known as the sulcus limitans. So this is the sulcus limitans that demarcates the lateral wall of the neural tube into a dorsal region and a ventral region. So here you can see this is the dorsal region and this is the ventral region. Now, how is this dorsal and a ventral region marked? This dorsal and ventral region is marked with the help of a longitudinal sulcus, which is known as the sulcus limitans. So cell of the dorsal region, they form the alar lamina. This is the alar lamina, which is formed by the cells of the dorsal region. Now they give rise to afferent or sensory fibers. So afferent or sensory fibers are formed in the cells of the dorsal region. Now basal lamina is formed in the cells of the ventral region. Now they give rise to efferent or motor fibers. The efferent and motor fibers are formed in the basal lamina. So this is the basal lamina and these are the efferent or motor fibers. This is the alar lamina and these are the afferent or the sensory fibers. So axons of cells of the basal lamina, they leave the cord as ventral roots. Now cells of the basal lamina, so these are the cells of the basal lamina and axons from them, they leave as ventral roots. These are the dorsal roots and these are the ventral roots. They join with the peripheral process of the dorsal root. Here they join with the peripheral process of dorsal root ganglia and help in the formation of the spinal nerve. So this is how the dorsal and the ventral roots, they combine to form a spinal nerve. So moving on, we have columns of the alar lamina. This is the alar or the dorsal cell lamina. We have the general somatic afferent column. Here you can see this is the general somatic afferent column. It extends throughout the spinal cord. So the general somatic afferent column is found throughout the spinal cord. It receives impulses from superficial, that is cutaneous skin, and deep proprioceptive receptors. So it is responsible for superficial and deep proprioception and is present, it extends throughout the spinal cord. Now this is the general visceral afferent column. Here you can see the general visceral afferent column is also a part of the alar lamina of the dorsal plate. Now it is confined to the thoracolumbar and the sacral regions only, that is the regions of the organs. So general visceral afferent column, since it has a visceral in its name, it is limited to the area where viscera are present. These are the areas of thoracolumbar region and the sacral region. Now it receives impulses from viscera and blood vessels. So the general somatic afferent column, it is present throughout and it receives innervation from skin and deep proprioceptor receptors. And the general visceral afferent column, it is present in the thoracolumbar and the sacral region, and it receives supply from the viscera and the blood vessels. It receives impulses from the viscera and the blood vessels. So moving on, now let's talk about the columns of the basal lamina. We have two columns in the basal lamina. We have the general visceral efferent column. Here, this is the general visceral efferent column. It is confined to the thoracolumbar and the sacral regions only. Again, it has visceral in its name, so it is confined to thoracolumbar and the sacral regions only. It provides preganglionic fibers. Preganglionic fibers are the fibers which actually first synapse in the ganglia. It supplies these fibers to the viscera, to the glands, and to the blood vessels. Then we have general somatic efferent column. This is the general somatic efferent column. It extends throughout the spinal cord and provides fiber that innervate the skeletal muscles. So this was all about this section. In this section, we talked about how the functional organization of spinal cord takes place. I know it's a mouthful and seems a bit difficult, but it's very easy. Just try to understand it and memorize it. You'll get through it easily. For further sections, keep watching sqadia.com.